Recently I had been thinking about doctors and that kind of thing. I just know a lot of people who are dealing with, illness and sickness, and they're going to the doctor, they're in the hospital and those kind of things. And I just thought how I'm thankful that the medical profession has improved throughout the years. I'm so thankful that they don't treat us like they did 100 years ago, or with the technology that they had 500 or 1,000 or more years ago. So that profession keeps changing, and it has to be difficult for a doctor to keep up with all the changes. And doctors, though, I would imagine is probably one of the oldest professions that we have, because from Adam and Eve to the time of present, people get sick and they hurt, and people have had to figure out how to best treat people. And doctors aren't the only professions that certainly date back that long. Farmers, of course. Adam and Eve were probably farmers, and teachers. They had children they had to teach. And there are so many others we could mention. But there are some professions that aren't as old, and they come about through different technology becomes made prevalent. We didn't always have auto mechanics because we didn't always have cars. We didn't have truck drivers, didn't have airline pilots, and those things. And as even more technology comes about, we have all these related to computers now, because everybody has a computer. Now there's computer programmers, there are web designers, there are social media influencers, which I have no idea what they do, but they're out there. And so there's another profession that might be even more recent, and I've heard about this and recently was doing some looking into it just to find out what it is. It doesn't have anything to do with computers or medicine or anything like that. It's called a life coach. I don't know if you've ever heard of a life coach. Apparently this is an occupation out there. And so I did some research on it, and a life coach, according to one website, quote, counsels and encourages clients through personal or career challenges. Okay, that's somewhat interesting. The more I learned, apparently they give guidance in a variety of different areas of life. If you need financial help, or if you need professional help, or even spiritual help, a life coach is there for you. And when I consider a life coach and what they do, I wondered what qualifies a person for such a job. You would think that person would really have to have it sort of all together in their life, that they are able to help somebody else in those areas. But one thing that I found is that some of them can charge anywhere from $90 an hour for their services up to over $200 an hour for their services. I'm thinking, sign me up for that one, if I can just help somebody in that way. And then I sort of got to thinking, well, honestly, as a pastor, I'm sort of like a life coach. I mean, in certain areas anyway. And thing is, you can talk to a pastor for free and not have to pay $200 or more an hour. Yet why do so many people choose life coaches instead of a minister to go to? Is it because they don't want anyone to bring up the religious or spiritual ramifications of whatever they want to do? They just want someone to rubber stamp their approval? I don't know. It could be a number of different reasons. But it is somewhat a shame that so many people go that route rather than go to church on a Sunday morning and maybe ask God. And so that leads us to what we're going to look at this morning. We all have the perfect life coach available to us. And that is who the Bible calls the Wonderful Counselor. That's one of his titles that we'll look at this morning. It is Jesus Christ, of course. And so we'll go to Isaiah chapter 9. And we'll just read from verses 2 through 7. And I want to read the word that was given to Isaiah about this individual who would be born. And so beginning in Isaiah 9 verse 2, it says, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as men rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. And we ask the Lord's blessing on the reading and hearing of his holy word. There's an awful lot going on there, a lot of context behind it. And so what I intend to do today and over the next 3 weeks is we'll be reading those same exact verses each week and looking at one of those different titles. There are 4 listed, so that works out well for 4 weeks. And if I don't get to a certain idea or concept today, hopefully I'll hit it over the next 3 weeks too. But let's say that when we look at Jesus being our counselor, his wonderful counselor is the first one. And I know that if you have a different translation of the Bible, there might be a comma in there between wonderful, comma, counselor. The older translations had it, the newer ones took it out. It's a discussion, honestly, for another day, and I don't really know if it should be there or not. So this morning I'm going to look at Jesus as wonderful and as counselor and sort of see what those 2 words mean and what kind of insight they give us. Now, we have this counselor available, and he is the one that can give us the ultimate direction in our lives if we would just ask him. So how many different questions in our lives have we had? Of course, innumerable. We can't count all the questions. But what if you were at a point in your life where you were thinking about entering the workforce or maybe even entering school, like higher education, and I want to know, should I go to a trade school? Should I go to a college? What should I do? Should I be a butcher? Should I be a baker? Should I be a candlestick maker? And so you're considering these 3 things. And I might say, well, I did good in candlestick making class, so maybe maybe I should do that. But I really like baking. But also maybe I have a relative who has a butcher shop, so I could have it in there. So what should I do? So I go to a life coach and I ask him, which one should I be? And they'll look at your grades in school, you'll look at all these different things, what your interests are. And in the end, the life coach is limited to the information you give him. And he's going to say, okay, let's look at this objectively, and I think you should be whichever one of the 3. That's how life coaches have to go about it because they don't know everything. But if we go to our wonderful counselor instead and ask him, should I be a butcher, a baker, or a candlestick maker, he doesn't have to ask you for any information about yourself. He already knows it. So he may quite possibly come back and say, I don't want you to be a butcher or a baker or a candlestick maker, but instead I have created you to be a blacksmith or to do this or to do that. Where a life coach would not know that. You could go to 10 different life coaches and get 10 different reasons for why you should be any one of the 3. And so if the life coach is going to give you an opinion, but the wonderful counselor will give you what you should be and what you should do, no matter what the situation is. And so let's say this brings up another aspect of our counselor. And when we say wonderful, which is the descriptive word in the English, and that's another issue in the original language, we have a distorted view of what wonderful is, or the word has evolved through the years. We think of wonderful as something great, it's amazing. For instance, well, to show you what it means in the Bible, for instance, the original word means something that is difficult for humans to understand. That is what wonderful should be. We don't always use it. I would say we rarely use it in that sense anymore. And actually in the New Testament, we read of wonders and signs that Jesus performed. Those are other words that refer to miracles. So wonderful could be miraculous as well, and Jesus Christ certainly is the embodiment of miraculous, is he not? So what we're saying is that our wonderful counselor is so far beyond our senses that we cannot completely grasp who he is. We can understand some of who he is, but not everything in his totality. For example, last Sunday in the afternoon, I was relaxing as I usually do when I am able to by turning on a football game, and it happened to be my favorite team was playing, so I marked that on my calendar. I got 3.5 hours of time here, and so my team was losing in the first quarter, losing in the second quarter, losing in the third quarter. Halfway through the fourth quarter, they started to show some life, and they ended up winning. They forced overtime and won in overtime. It was pretty crazy. So you might have said that their quarterback engineered a wonderful comeback. In our terms, that's probably true. In football terms, yeah. But the thing is, we could see how he did it. He was patient. He made the right throws at the right time. He ran in the lanes he should run, all that kind of stuff. But in a biblical sense, it was not wonderful, because it was only be not wonderful if we didn't know how he did this. This was just, miraculous, not miraculous at all. So that's the difference between our wonderful and the biblical version of the word wonderful. When was the last time you thought about Jesus and who he is and were just filled with amazement and wonder? That is what his name and his person should bring to the forefront of our minds. No matter what we do, we know that this counselor is he's there for us, and just think of all the things that he has done for us, and that begins even before the virgin birth and his living a sinless life and dying for us when he was wrongly convicted and so forth. But when we have a right relationship with our wonderful counselor, it tends to give us wisdom. And hopefully, if we are walking with the Lord long enough, we will have obtained some wisdom. And it reminds me of part of the birth story of Jesus in the Bible. When you think particularly about Jesus's human father, we'll call him Joseph, we'll see how Joseph was very wise when all of this was going on. And it says, this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, but because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him, and took Mary home to be as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. So that's right out of the Bible, part of that birth story, birth narrative. And here Joseph is a great example of a person who relied on wisdom and the counsel of God. because even though an angel from heaven came and appeared to him and spoke to him, he still had a choice. He didn't have to obey. He could have said, I want nothing to do with this. I'm divorcing Mary. More so, I don't know if you realize this, under the law, Joseph could have had Mary stoned to death because she was pregnant with someone else's child while they were in this betrothal stage, which is a little stage before an engagement, but it's a legal entity that they were involved in there. Yet Joseph was wise to abide to the counsel of the angel, which was God's counsel, of course. And all too often, how are we more likely to obey the counsel of God or friends or someone close to us? Thankfully, God sent Jesus to be born, and so that he could grow into a man and become this wonderful counselor that Isaiah told us would come. And that alone should fill us with this overwhelming sense of wonder and amazement that he would be so humble as to be obedient to his Father in that way. And so Jesus truly is our wonderful counselor. But what do we do with that? Okay, we know he's great. We just sit back, okay, Jesus is great. Now I can get along with my life. Well, some experts, I don't always believe experts, but whatever, experts estimate that every day we might make as many as 35,000 individual decisions. I don't know how they come up with that number, but even if it's half of that, 17, 18,000, it's a lot. And you can divide it out by all the, waking hours and all that kind of stuff. My question, though, is how many times in a day do you remember consulting with God? If you're making 10,000, even 20,000 decisions, how many have you consulted God about? I would wonder, are we consulting him half the time? Are we consulting him less than that, 5,000 times a day? Are we talking to God? I think most people are not doing that. How about 16 times a day? And I come up with 16, let's say we sleep 8 hours in a day, so we're awake 16 hours. Do we consult him once an hour about whatever's on our minds? And if so, that means we could be making up to 34,984 decisions every day without consulting our wonderful counselor. And so, where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us in a situation where we should be thirsting for him and seeking him out even more. The Apostle Paul writes in one of his letters to the Corinthians, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. So sometimes we might not be aware that we are really sitting down and praying for a specific situation, but if we're just always walking with him, that sort of accomplishes the same goal. And so at this time of the year, we should be mindful that Christ came into a dark world at the will of his Father. And for many people, that darkness is symbolic of living without giving any thought whatsoever to the counselor. Pastor Adrian Rogers once said to his congregation, some of you this Christmas, you're floundering about like a ship without a sail and a rudder on a dark and stormy night. You don't know the will of God. Don't you think it's about time you let Jesus, the counselor, take over your life? His name is Counselor. And so it's a scary proposition for a lot of people to give up control. If there's one thing in our life that I can have control, I'm going to grasp that and hold on to that because it gives me comfort. Yet, God wants it all. He wants us to give our everything to him. And we should know through Isaiah that he's a wonderful counselor. He is beyond our abilities and our senses, so he's one that can be trusted. So a lot of people might come to church and say again, that's great, but how do I do it? Well, I was recently speaking with a friend about this, and these are sort of little bumper sticker kind of slogans, but I will use them because they are rooted in the scriptures. And the first one is going to be, well, I'll let you know what it is first. If you are in a situation where you don't have time to waste and you need to make a decision, maybe you've heard of this: don't pray, just obey. And yeah, I said don't pray. Well, if you are walking with him, you sort of are. But in a moment, you need to know what the right thing is, and you just do the right thing. What I mean by that is maybe you're viewing something online and something inappropriate on an email comes up, you get those spam emails and all. You have a moment, I can click on it or I can delete it. You don't always have to say, God, what should I do? You just obey him. You get rid of it because you know that's a road you don't want to go down. Or if you're trying to watch your waist around the holiday season, you go to a friend's house, oh, I'm just stopping in to drop something off. They say, oh, I just got a fresh batch of cookies out of the oven. Should I take a cookie or not? I know I really shouldn't. Should I, God? Shouldn't I? Well, you know that you're trying to watch your waistline, so you obey. You just say, no thanks, I gotta run. It can be as simple as something like that. Now, there are times when you certainly should pray, times when you have more time, and these are big decisions in your life. Again, what should I do for a living? The butcher, baker, candlestick maker example. So you do have time where you can bring those concerns to the wonderful counselor. And we should not ever be hesitant to seek him. So that's simple enough there. Sometimes when you have time, you should, stop and pray. And then a third option is to seek out a fellow believer for guidance. And everyone always has an opinion of what somebody else should do. Let's find someone who has a godly opinion, who's walking the walk, and see if they confirm what we think that the Lord is telling us. A good example of this is around in the Bible, right after Jesus was born, probably a year or two later, we read about the wise men, and they came to Jerusalem looking for the newborn king. So what did they do? They went to Herod. They said, yep, we're looking for him. He says, when you find him, come back to me, let me know where he is. They then went to the house, and then before they went back to Herod, who really secretly wanted to kill the baby because he thought he was going to be another king who would take his throne, they were warned in a dream, don't go to Herod, go straight back home. So we read that in the Bible. How do you think that happened? One of them woke up and he had a dream. And now you're wondering, what about the other guys? They must have consulted with each other. Hey, do you think we should go back? The other says, nope, not at all. Maybe he said he had a dream. Maybe he didn't. We don't know. But in the end, they consulted with each other because they knew that that would confirm what they thought God was telling them. And so my hope for this whole season, especially this season, and of course it should be all year round, but especially now, is to deepen your faith and your walk with the Father, whose Son is the wonderful counselor. I mean, honestly, do we really want another superficial Christmas day and a season leading up to that where we're running around like crazy trying to find the right presents, and then you go to the grocery store on the day before and you lined out the door and you can't find the stuffing and they're all sold out and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they wake up on December 26th and they're just relieved that it's all over. And they haven't grown at all. They haven't been drawn closer to God through the last several weeks or even months. That's what we want to avoid, and we as believers and followers of Jesus should be drawing closer to him no matter when we celebrate the birth of the Christ child. And December 26th could be a day when we wake up and we say, wow, over the last month, I've really experienced God in ways that I have not ever considered before. That should be our goal no matter what happens. And just think, our wonderful counselor, he is the greatest. He is the greatest one that we are ever going to come in contact with. We could call him, well, he's not the typical earthly counselor at all. And like I said, you can go to these people who charge $200 an hour, these life coaches. Well, we have an eternal life coach at our disposal anytime. And with the human ones, you don't know what kind you're going to get. But with our wonderful counselor, you do know that he is the true embodiment of truth and faith and knowledge. And he's also what Isaiah calls the king who will reign on David's throne forever. And so we all make our choice, whether we will go at life alone or whether we will seek someone else as a counselor, like a life coach, or seek the wonderful counselor out whenever we need help. And so, like I said, these people, they can charge a healthy sum for their services. But one thing that is similar between the life coach and the wonderful counselor is there is a cost attached to each one. Of course, the life coach, he charges a healthy fee, so that's obviously our cost. Well, the cost of following the wonderful counselor is your obedience to him, and the cost of not doing what you want, but doing what he wants and obeying his plan for your life. And so, which cost are you going to choose? That's really the question. But at least we know that when we follow the wonderful counselor, then the cost of following him is not near as high, because we will have eternal rewards that are attached and associated to having a true, deep relationship with him. So let us bow our heads and close out with a word of prayer. Father God, we are thankful for the word of Isaiah and how it was about 700 years prior to Jesus Christ that he gave these words, which is some 2,700 years ago today. Yet it still speaks to us this day. We are so fortunate that we can look back on this and see that fulfillment that took place in Bethlehem when Jesus Christ was born, the Messiah, the Anointed One. And so, God, we can also see how that baby grew into a wise man, and he is alive today, even though he died. You resurrected him, and he is our wonderful counselor, available anytime that we need, so that he can guide us in the ways of righteousness and in the ways that we should go. And God, we just ask that over the next several days and weeks, and even through, just say, the end of the year, that you would be our guide, day in and day out. We know that we are going to have to rely on you, and we are thankful that you willingly invite us to do so. And so it is simply in the name of Jesus we pray these things. Amen.